It's the SKOR North Twins Show.
All right, SKOR North Twins Show, extra innings live from Target Field for the series finale against the Miami Marlins, Game 3. Ross Brendel back on the SKOR North studio front. I'm live here in the Legends Thrivent Club, Legends Club, whatever the hell we want to call it. We don't call it 3M Arena at Mariucci. You call it Mariucci, right? Like, you just call things by what you know them as a kid. That's how I'm going to go about this.
Some of us still call Huntington Bank Stadium TCF Bank Stadium. Yeah. That's a tough one to get used to.
So yeah, hit the like button, subscribe button here as the Minnesota Twins season is officially on the line, as the headline says. So Thursday, the Twins looking for some help. And Royals were wrapping things up. Tigers wrapping things up. It actually looked like the Rays, who I believe, I watched the first few innings of that. There was a note that the Rays had won 30 consecutive games when leading after 6 innings. This in their last 30 times and leading after 6. So go figure. The Rays actually blow the game. The Tigers win. The Royals hold off, obviously, the Nationals. And now the Twins have to win today to prevent them from being down 3 games with 3 to play. A win against the Marlins. They are still just 2 games back with 3 to play. Even with my terrible attempt at math, my math is mathing here. Essentially, the Twins need to win out, and the Royals and Tigers have to at least lose 2 of those 3 games. The Tigers have the White Sox, so unless the White Sox can play, what would be more impressive? The White Sox avoiding the biggest, the worst losing season of all time, or sweeping the Tigers and somehow gifting the Twins the last wild card spot? Or Kansas City has to go to Atlanta, which is in the middle of a tropical storm right now, and Atlanta has to play another game on Monday against the Mets. So, yep, Roscoe, the season is officially on the line here against the Marlins.
Well, if you're looking for a ray of hope, because I was telling you, Declan, off air, which is why we kind of came in chuckling, is that I was watching, just Scoreboard watching the Tigers and the Rays, and you have the Nationals and the Royals, as you alluded to. And the Nationals were down early, but they come back to tie it at 4, and you're like, well, they're the home team. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Then you see the Rays are playing well. They're up 3-0. You're like, okay, this is good. Maybe if one of the 2 teams loses, maybe you'll be in a decent spot. And in the span of about 20-25 minutes, both teams ended up doing what they needed to do to win. And now the Twins, to your point, pretty much have to win out, basically have to win out. And then you hope that one of those 2 teams loses. At least 2 out of 3. My hunch would be, Declan, that you're hoping that it's Kansas City, because they by far have not played as well as the Tigers have. They also have a tougher opponent. But you're also still thinking that the Twins would win 4 in a row, including tonight against the Marlins. My confidence level is not there. I don't believe that will happen. But at this point, that's your hope. You have to do that and just see what happens, or at least get to Sunday down a game and hope that there's a chance. Don't count out your White Sox just yet. They have won again today. They are doing everything they can.
Grady Sizemore, baby.
They are doing everything they can to get to 40-plus wins. They are now just 1 win away from hitting number 40. So,
God,
who knows? Baseball's a funny game. You truly never do know. It feels like it ended this afternoon, I'll be honest. It kind of felt like it ended with the egg that was laid on Monday night, Declan.
Yeah,
kind of feels like it's over now. Mm-hmm. But again, if you win tonight, you truly never do know. That's where I'm at right now.
And I believe the Twins in 2009 were down, 3 games with 4 to play. They ended up tying the division. They forced the game 163. We all know how that ended. But at the same time, it's such a buzzkill to be basically backdooring and cakewalking your way to a playoff spot, which for 90% of the season or so, the Twins have been doing. And then for them to collapse ever since the loss to the Rangers, everything has snowballed from there. And now the Twins, who look to be a lock to be a playoff team, and many experts picked them to run away with the Central. I think the Twins still obviously would have taken just the wild card spot. Now here they sit, needing a win against a team that lost their 100th game in the Marlins yesterday, and also needing to sweep Baltimore, who, by the way, plays tonight. And if Baltimore, I believe, wins tonight, they're just 3 games back. And if they sweep the Twins, they could get the East and get a bye. So it went from Baltimore maybe needing nothing to play for. And by the way, a lot can change here in about 24 hours. So we'll see where Baltimore sits. And maybe Baltimore just elects, we already know we have a home playoff series locked in. Let's just get healthy and get right. But the Twins are going to have to win out. They're going to have to win out, get some help from around the league. And as one of my best friends who was in my wedding, hi Sam Priner says, I'll say it, they're cooked. Yeah, they are. They're as cooked as a $2 steak here, to borrow a phrase from Jim Ross.
Well, had I known that was your friend, I never would have let that quote see the light of day.
That's true. I didn't hit that. That was Ross, Sam. I did not.
That was me. So Sam thought he could get to you to become famous on the SKOR North Twins Show. Turns out all he had to do was let me have control of the remote. I guess my point here, Declan, maybe you have to wait, or my thought here is maybe you have to wait until after tonight to see what happens. But at what point, and I know the Twins Show, the flagship show, has kind of started to do a little bit of this. At what point are we starting to have those off-season conversations of what comes next? Because some of those, in theory, will happen very quickly. Typically, I'm not saying that this is going to happen. I think 2 weeks ago on this show, I said there's no chance. Now I'm starting to believe it actually might happen, that Rocco Baldelli could be out. Typically, you're going to see within a day or two of the season ending, Declan, you start to see some of those moves of maybe a bench coach is out, maybe a manager's out. When do we start to, as fans, start to have those conversations, or at least those thoughts? Can you start that right now? Or do you still need to wait another game or two to see what happens?
I mean, I'm sure preliminary talks have probably been discussed already. I can tell you that, exit interview strategies exit interviews will be taking place by this time next week, if not sooner, if the Twins obviously don't make the playoffs, and that would include, the media getting to talk to Rocco Falvey, maybe even Joe Pohlad, we'll see. But I think some of those exit strategies have probably already been discussed, and we had a big talk about this in the flagship show on the Twins Show today with Mackie and Judd. And Judd's here, by the way. He's in the press box somewhere snacking on popcorn and eating his Livia bars. But if for the Twins, they just don't like change. But you can't really look at this and look at, even with last season being the most successful season they've had in 20-plus years, for them to be out of the playoffs while they're trying to contend 3 of those last 4 years, including this one. I mean, eventually you have to make some type of change. I know I joked with you in our newsletter, which you can find. You can subscribe to the SKOR North newsletter that Ross does a great job putting together. Joe Pohlad's been watching these games from his suite intently for the last few days. Now he's here a lot other times, but I haven't seen him before. So they're definitely, I think, mulling some changes. But for an organization that doesn't like change, which is what the Twins like, they like being competitive, and for the most part, for 90% of the season, they were competitive, but they have fallen short of championship aspirations. Eventually, I do think some of those conversations start, but maybe we're a little early on those, Ross, but I think it's probably starting. Those conversations are probably percolating.
Well, and if the season ends in no playoff berth, which for today is the first time, it's probably a couple days ago that I feel like it's not going to happen, and the afternoon results really kind of solidified that. But on those topics and those discussions, it's really easy to say get rid of the manager, but I think we would all note as Twins fans, it's a bit more layered than that. Joe Pohlad watching from his suite. I think Joe Pohlad needs to look in the mirror a lot for what's happened this year. I hope he does. I hope he's not tone deaf to realize that the fans are coming for him with pitchforks. I hope he stays off of social media for his mental health, but then a part of me hopes that he is on social media so he understands how furious the fans are. And, I did see something else percolating on the interwebs, Declan, where there were some people saying, I don't get why Twins fans are so upset. And I don't get why there was a picture of the crowd and people were talking about, I don't understand why nobody's at these games. This is a big game. I think you have to understand the mindset of what's happened to the Twins in the last 365 days as to why the fans might be upset, and why at the end of the day, if they win a couple more games, you have a over 500 season. Yeah, for a lot of baseball teams, okay, you didn't accomplish what you wanted, but it wasn't a terrible season. It's everything that the Twins have done from losing in the divisional round last year to now that I think has a lot of fans upset, quote unquote. Maybe it is a terrible season. So it's just going to be really interesting to see where they go from here, Declan, because I don't think it can be as easy as what they did 2-3 years ago when they went belly up and they only fired the trainer and made it out to be his problem. And now the last 2-3 years, the Twins are always injured anyway. So clearly it wasn't the trainer's problem. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. Obviously, Joe Pohlad's not going to fire himself. So it'll just be interesting to see what happens. But long story short, long way around this, if they miss the playoffs, something's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be the manager, but there has to be a fall guy or fall people somewhere. And you guys talked about this on the Twins Show yesterday or Monday. I think it was yesterday. Carlos Correa's comments about, well, you can maybe paraphrase them better than I can, but yeah, we all want to win here, but maybe we're not all doing what we can. That's a problem. There's just so much there.
Yeah, if there are going to be changes, I think it's mostly like coaching staff. And yeah, to borrow a phrase from Dave, your total system failure from I believe, I don't know if that was Joe. I think that was it Rob Antony?
That was Terry Ryan, I believe.
Was it Terry Ryan?
When he took over the job, or when it was, I can't remember. It was right around Terry. It was somewhere around Terry Ryan. He talked about being a total system failure when they were supposed to be good and they lost 100 games.
Yeah, so the total system failure works again here. And yeah, just you don't. The problem is, and these are more layered and nuanced conversations that I'm really excited to have here as this plays out over the next few months for the Twins when the season does end. If you have Carlos Correa and Pablo Lopez, who was signed to a big contract extension, and Royce Lewis, who was a budding superstar, and you have a prospect pool that obviously is one of the best in baseball, you don't have seasons like this repeatedly where you are trying to contend and your messages were contending and you have fallen short of the playoffs 3 out of 4 times. There's a ripple effect there that then lingers into your stars like Correa, et cetera, where, yes, he has a fully guaranteed contract and a full no-trade clause, and it becomes a little complicated with that ankle. But, I mean, do you think he wants to sit here and not contend? Carlos Correa has been in the playoffs every year, I think, but 2 in his entire career. So that's the interesting part here. What changes are greenlit from these players? Like Carlos Correa's supposed to be involved in some of the trade deadline acquisitions and then discussions like that. That was a big thing a few months ago, and then there was no trade. So I think there's a lot of lingering butterfly effects here that will have to there's some difficult conversations that they're going to have to face here for, again, an organization that doesn't like change and doesn't like to have difficult conversations.
Well, the Correa thing's interesting because if he ever came to ownership and said, I want out, again, that's layered. Well, that's a little bit of buyer's remorse on your end, Carlos, because you should have kind of known what you were signing up for. You're signing up for an organization that historically is pretty good and competitive, but there's a lot of red flags that show you they might not always 100% be in on trying to win a championship, and Carlos Correa should know that. Okay, let's play that out, Declan. Carlos Correa says, boy, I don't like the vibe. I don't like this. I want out. Well, that diminishes his value if other people know that. His angle diminishes that value. The money that he makes diminishes that value.
Correct.
So it's very difficult for, I think, the Twins to even find a suitor and then get something in return that they would even want. So it's funny that we're having these conversations because until a month ago, I did not envision we would be having these conversations. The fans were always a little bit upset, on edge, maybe not fully bought into the team. And maybe that's my fault. I was. Even when guys were getting injured, I looked at this team and said, it's still good enough to be a top 6 team in the American League. I still believe they are. They should be. They absolutely should be. I don't know what's went wrong, but it's up to Joe Pohlad, Derek Falvey, Dave St. Peter to a degree to figure out what it was so this doesn't happen again. And a part of it, Declan, I don't think it's always throwing money at stuff that fixes the problem, but whether it's in prospects or cash, you're going to have to spend some money this offseason. Oh, yeah. There are holes in this roster to fill in your rotation. There are massive holes in the bullpen, which I know you can't always spend your way to a good bullpen, but there has to be work done there. And we've seen it when the lineup was going bad in April, and it's going bad again now. Maybe some of it's injury related. They have left the entire town of Minneapolis and St. Paul on the base paths this year. And that just can't happen, and it's always in big situations. So maybe you need to go the route of the Guardians a little bit. Get a few more guys that are just going to slap the ball around and put it in play and not always trying to hit for a home run. There's just, Declan, I wish the show was 2 hours today because there's so much you can talk about with how this thing went south and is more than likely going to end in a non-playoff appearance.
Yeah, there's philosophies, I think, that have to change, and I think that's where they look at it. I think those are the changes that they make because they think those ones are safer. It's not blowing out the manager. It's not firing your president of baseball operations, and those ones are the ones you have to green light. But then also, like, it's Rocco's staff. So, like, if you keep the manager around and you say, hey, we're going to blow out hitting coach and base coach and XYZ, well, then Rocco gets to pick that again. So at least he gets the first dibs at picking that again, or are they telling him no? Like, to your point, there's a long spider web conversation here that's going to take place, and at least the Twins will have 4 more games here. That's guaranteed here at Target Field. They'll close it out at home, and we'll see. Again, crazier things have happened in baseball. We've seen nuttier things that take place, but the vibes, even in general, to your point of this team, it's not where it should be for the Minnesota sports fan, not even for the Twins fan, but for the common Minnesota sports fan.
Were you around any of the players today in media availability, and was that during or after what happened with the Tigers and with the Royals? Because it wouldn't shock me now, Declan. I think we'll learn a little bit about this team tonight. If this is just a lackluster, disinterested performance, I think that tells you everything that they need to know. If they come out tonight and play well, I don't really know what that says to me, but I'd be slightly more happy than how angry I've been the last 30 days, where it just looks like they're not interested in going through the motions. So did you have access to them, and were they scoreboard watching?
I mean, yeah, they were. And by the time media came in, both those games had been final for about 20, 30 minutes. They were watching. They were aware. But, in classic cliche talk, they control what they can control. So if they aren't getting any help from other teams, they obviously have to go out and win and go from there. So, yeah, no, they're well aware of the scoreboard watching. And, as Rocco said, we've tried to be in playoff mode all season long, which is a little counterproductive. I don't think that's actually the case, but everyone's on deck here. Everyone is available. Justin Topa finally made his season debut yesterday. We finally saw Justin Topa. He lives. Everyone's on deck. Everyone has to try to figure it out. They had to go to their bullpen in the second inning yesterday. It worked out for them. But yeah, everyone's available, and they're going to try to save their year. We'll see what happens. Will you always remember where you were when we found out that Justin Topa was indeed a real person and not just a name that the Twins allegedly acquired in a trade? Will you remember the day? Unlike Patrick Royce, actually, I talked to Justin Topa more than once throughout this season as he was rehabbing and stuff. So I actually saw him. Patrick never actually saw him. Yes, I was able to see Justin Topa. KOC, could he come over to the clubhouse? I don't think that. Can KOC, in a classic Twins rhetoric, can he pitch? Can he hit? Can he do this? I think would be the first answer to KOC. Roscoe, do you have a quick hitter for me on extra innings here? I do, and I think we've talked about this before. There were so many different ways that I was going to go with this, because this, in theory, could be my last extra innings with you. Sure. I also don't really know what this says or why I'm thinking about it, but ever since a certain man interviewed to be a general manager for another team, we never hear from him or see him anymore. My question to you, Declan, can you confirm nor deny that Thad Levine still exists? He's not being held captive. He's not locked in a closet. When he first got here with Derek Falvey, you would see them both all the time. Media rounds, on TV, radio interviews. I think we've interviewed him. I have not seen or heard from the guy in 2 years. And I think it all started with when he was interviewing for, I can't remember what job. Was it Boston? There was another job that he was linked to and I believe interviewed for. Yeah. Why do we never hear from him anymore? I don't know why. I've seen him. He's here. He also exists. I've seen him. Been a few weeks since I probably have seen him, but he usually still goes in there post game and stuff. And but no, he is. You're right that they were kind of a package tag team deal for their first few years here. In the last few, he's just kind of been. That might be his own thing. He was very good with the media. It was great. It wasn't like he was awkward or didn't like doing it. He actually was a godsend for a lot of people that obviously are forced to talk to people that don't want to talk all the time, and he was the opposite. But no, he exists. I'm not sure though why they have put him behind the curtain more. He said something, and it was the year that they traded Escobar, and they traded probably 4 or 5 guys, maybe Zach Duke. They were just unloading the roster. Yep. And when it first started, I think it was Escobar, and the players were very upset because they found out on TV. And right away, Thad Levine, he was on TV that night. Him and Derek decided, okay, this is kind of bad. Let's course correct. Let's be with the team, explain to them what's happening, and they unloaded more players. Well, about that day, maybe a day later, he said, when I say he, I'm talking about Thad Levine, he was on TV, and he pretty much said, Derek and I subscribe to the Billy Beane philosophy, okay? You put your team together, you watch them play in April, May, you see what happens. June and July, you fix the roster. You do what you can.
August and September, you sit back and watch because you really can't do anything else. In that interview, he said basically, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't remember it exactly. We're talking 4 or 5 years ago. Derek and I believe that at the trade deadline, you're either buying or selling. You can't stand pat.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating that since then they've essentially stood pat twice when they had chances to do stuff for the roster. And this year, I wouldn't put that all on them. I think their hands were tied. But to me, that's very telling. When the quote-unquote general manager says, we believe you either need to buy or sell at the trade deadline, and this year of all years to buy and help your roster out to do nothing, it's very telling, and I think the finger can be pointed one direction.
Absolutely. Hit the like button, subscribe button here on the SKOR North Twins Show. That's Ross Brendel. I am Declan Goff. And I bet KOC could pitch too, Peter. I think he probably could. They could use him. They absolutely could. And also, could he hit with runners in scoring position? I think that can he be an Ohtani? Can he be a dual threat dude? That would be also very, very sweet.
He strikes me as a second baseman that can steal about 20, 30 bases.
Really? I think he's too big. He strikes me as a right fielder or a third baseman.
How tall is he? Well, he had to be pretty tall. He was a quarterback.
Yeah, he's like I would actually
maybe
put him
shortstop.
In the corner. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I feel that arm motion to Judd, as Judd says, that arm motion isn't good. You know, I think that's why it failed as a quarterback. I don't like the. I think there'd be a lot of hops. You need an active first baseman to scoop up those hops.
You know what, though? The hop is in now. Nobody throws the ball straight to first base. We're all bouncing it.
That's true. All right, this is SKOR North Extra Innings. Appreciate everyone listening and watching. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll be talking at you soon.